Welcome to the roller coaster of midlife. I'm your host, Lucie Q. And joining me is life coach and midlife transition expert, Holly Boxenhorn. And my goal for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. And I do that by bringing you experts on everything from hormones to empty nests to redefining our next chapters. And over the past few weeks, Holly has been guiding us through goal planning so that we can kick off 2024 with a bang. Now, we've all been there, filled with excitement on December 31st, because this is going to be the year that we fill in the blank, only to find ourselves a few days later falling back into our old routines, back into our old patterns, except now we feel even worse because we've let ourselves down. Or have we? Now, we started off this series by talking about why motivation doesn't work. And then we looked at 5 questions that you can ask yourself to kickstart your planning. And then we looked at why your goals fail you. And you can check out in the show notes for the links to all of those videos, because today we are going to be talking about your kryptonite. And that is those pesky little things that can derail you. And we're also going to take a look at how to break down your goals into manageable steps. Holly, are you ready?
I am ready. Rolling up the sleeves.
Okay. Now, I'm going to pick an easy topic because I think it's probably something that every woman has had on her New Year's resolution list. And it tends to be one of those things that are on year after year. And that's about being a healthier version of ourselves. Yeah. But for me, just simply thinking of that, I immediately start to think of dozens of different things. And I have to think about, exercise and diet. What do I eat? Am I eating the right things? And, it's overwhelming.
It is.
Just even right now, even thinking about it, there's a little bit of panic that starts to sink in. Yeah. And I can't help but think that I'm derailing myself, 60 seconds into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're making a good point, and I think that's a large part of what we attended to the last couple of weeks when we talked about getting really super clear where your best efforts are going to be served. So you don't get overwhelmed, because even I myself, as a coach, I get overwhelmed. There's so much coming at us, what we should be doing, where our best interest will be. But when we do the legwork beforehand, we really need to fall back on that, to guide us. So to know what's going to make sense for us. So the things that we talked about was that, remember, we talked about that wheel of life we talked about, knowing in what areas we might not be satisfied or happy and need work, or areas that we just want to plug into more. Doing the values assessment, really getting clear where your core values are at. These are going to be the guiding instruments that are going to help you then say, does this make sense for me? Or does that make sense for me? So I think that to help decrease the overwhelm, there's a couple of things that we've attended to already, is really getting clear about what makes sense for you, what makes you tick. Remember, we talked about the 3 A's in aspiration making, affection, authenticity, and autonomy. It's really important that our aspirations are locked into those 3 things. And I would encourage everyone to go back to that, because that's super important. But more importantly, we also, well, I don't want to say more importantly, but just as importantly, we need to take a look at what I refer to as our kryptonite. What is it about ourselves and our present circumstances that may prevent us from being able to lock in our aspirations, lock in more of what we want in and for our life? And there's a ton of research done on this. There's a woman by the name of, forgive me if I do not pronounce it correctly, Gabrielle Ottenberg, I think is how it's spelled. Gabrielle Ottenberg, she's a leading researcher in motivation. And she actually has done work where she has this actually acronym is called WAP, where you break down and take a step back and look at your circumstances, that what obstacles might you encounter along the way as you're aspiring for these things in your life. So this way you can have a plan in place when that comes up. So on the simplest level, I'll just talk about, no, actually, we'll talk about simple and broad and deep. Simple levels might be like things that get in our way is maybe we're addicted to our media, our phone, digital. We're not getting work done because we're spending too much time on our phone. What do we need to, do to lessen that type of distraction? On a bigger level, maybe there's some serious health conditions that will prevent us from being able to become more fit and healthy. Like maybe we have a bad back or an injured part of our body that might have to be thought about when we're planning what kind of movement we're going to do in our body. Maybe we have certain issues with food that might be in it. Like some people can't have gluten, or some people, have high blood pressure like this, or have allergies. What is it about you and your present circumstances that might get in the way of acquiring what it is that you want in and for your life? Maybe it's on a deeper level. There's some past trauma that, or major self-doubt, and issues of confidence that's going to prevent you from kicking ass in your career, standing up for yourself and asking for that raise, getting more on social media. What is it that's going to zap your energy? Because we don't think about these things. We have to have a plan in place and the resources to combat it.
So say if I'm trying to think of what would be something that would derail you from being a healthier you, and let's pick exercise.
Okay.
Because that's something that it's easy to say I'm just going to skip yoga today, and then skipping yoga today turns into 10 days, and then we're like, why do I even bother at this point?
Right.
So once we identify what that problem might be, what type of plan would we put in place?
Well, that's just it. We have to identify what is that obstacle that's getting in the way. So as Gabrielle puts it into the WOP acronym,
Can you spell the WOP?
WOOP.
Okay.
And so WOP basically breaks down to the W stands for wish. What is it that you're wishing for, you're aspiring for more in your life? Name what your aspiration, right? Then you're going to take a look at O, and you're going to identify the outcome, the benefit of why, your why here, you want this. Make sure that it's in alignment with your core values, the 3 A's. It makes sense, right? So then we want to make sure, what's the benefit of this? Is it supporting my why? So then we're on task with what goal this goal makes sense for us. Then we want to take a look at the second O is the obstacles that might get in the way of making this happen. So let's say it's aspiring for more movement, but we have a bad back, right? Or, we have an injury. Well, if we want to include more movement, what do we need to do? Do we need to see a physical therapist? Do we need to get support like devices to support our back so that we can move? Do we need to know that we need to maybe ice or to prevent inflammation before and after? What is the possible obstacles? And then we can come up with a plan in place. On a bigger level, like for people who might have issues with trauma or self-doubt or confidence, who's going to be in their corner cheering them on and reminding them, to dig deep, honor, the struggle, but at the same time move forward? What people are going to be on their board of trustees, so to say, whether it's a professional, a dear friend, a doctor? What are those things you're going to put into place for yourself so that just in case these obstacles do come up, you have a plan in place, right? So that's what the P stands for. P in the WOP is the plan.
Okay.
Around any and all obstacles.
I can't help but feel like I'm connecting it to something, but I can't quite find the words right now. But it's almost like we have the goal, but in order to reach our goal, there's all this sort of inner work that we need to do.
100%.
So it's like, yes, I want to have a goal of losing weight, but it's not just about getting on the mat and doing my yoga. It's not just about what I'm choosing to eat.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a whole other level that we're not giving enough attention to. And that's why do I do what I do, or why am I not doing
Yeah.
what I want to be doing, and really sort of doing that inner work there.
That's why we did stuff earlier. We did 3 episodes earlier than this about the digging deep, pulling back the layers, finding out and understanding where your best efforts are going to be served. Not like I've said this before, Susie next door, or, what mom thinks, or your husband or partner thinks. What makes sense for you? We have to do all the legwork we talked about ahead of this before we can even sit down and create a plan for ourselves. It could be, like just even on like on a simplest level, like sometimes people will be like, all right, so I'm definitely gonna include more movement in my life. I'm like, okay, great, that's great. So like, what obstacles? Like, do you have a pair of sneakers? Do you have gym equipment? Do you have a place where you can work out? It's going to turn cold. Can you get outdoors? Like, what are the obstacles that are going to get in your way? How about your schedule? Familial responsibilities. For me, familiar responsibilities, big time, get in the way of living my life. That is my life.
I think that happens to most of us mothers, most of us women.
I joke like, damn, my kids get in the way of living my life, but oh, that's right, they're part of my life. But on a greater level, my mother with her Alzheimer's, and my mother-in-law now with her Parkinson's, on any given day, something's going to shift and change. And again, I'm going to bring it back to a simpler level. I got 3 dogs now. Let me tell you now, any day shit happens here, literally and figuratively.
You had what, 3 kids?
It's 3. It's like it's three kids.
Yeah,
like,
but you had
kids.
Oh, 2 kids. So you
traded
your 2 kids for 3 dogs.
Right. And the dogs, like, for example, last week, Rudy got neutered. So like, that was a whole dynamic, an obstacle that definitely got in my way of doing the things I wanted to do that week. So we have to think about the obstacles we possibly might encounter before we create a plan. We have to be realistic. We have to look at everything. This way we can go the distance. What happens is we jump into these desires and these goals. We don't do the legwork to make sure it even makes sense, these goals for us. And then we slam ourselves even further without even having a strategic plan, taking a look at the likelihood that things are going to get in the way. And then we blame ourselves for not having the determination or the motivation or the drive to do it. Bullshit. The way we make things happen is putting the right supports and habits in place. That's how we make shit happen. Not, having the gumption. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about being smart and strategic.
And I think we also be, compassionate towards ourselves.
Oh, yes.
That, as I said before we hit record, last week was just in the toilet for me. I wasn't expecting it. Couldn't plan for it. You just have to deal with it. So I think we do have to have a lot of self-compassion for what we're doing.
100%.
And acknowledge that just because we weren't, working on our aspirations today or this week, it doesn't mean that we can't just start again tomorrow.
You're actually bringing up a great reference into some strategies to cultivate self-compassion and not set yourself up for this perfectionistic mindset. Become more of an optimalist, understanding I'm still going to aspire to be the best version of myself, my optimal self, but understand there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, and shit's going to happen in between, and we're not going to beat ourselves up for it, and so one of the things that help us do that are things like, we talked about this earlier, was setting up very bright lines for ourselves, being very specific about what is it that we are aiming to do this week towards making shit happen, or in general. Now, we do this for a couple of reasons. Bright lines establish very clearly what we're aiming for, right? So if it's like we want to exercise more, we want to drink less, we want to put out more content on social media, we want to pitch more podcasts. What does that mean? I'm going to pitch to 3 people this week. I'm going to be very specific. I'm going to only have 3 drinks this week. I'm going to exercise, be bright lines. And when I say bright lines, it's the expression that lawyers use in their contracting. They establish bright lines so we are very clear about what is and isn't going to be, the case. However, what's a beautiful thing about establishing bright lines is that it's going to be a given that we're going to fall off the horse, right? We're going to. But if we establish bright lines, when we do, we know exactly where to pick up where we last left off. Because it's going to happen. Either shit's going to get in the way, or we're going to have a bad week, or we're not. We're gonna eat the cake, or have the extra drinks, or sleep in later and not get to whatever. It's human, right? But if we establish some realistic, bright lines, then we know just where we can pick up from. So it helps on 2 levels: getting really clear about what we're going for, and then also helping us to get back on the horse, so to say, when we fall off.
It's almost like the bright lines are our template.
Exactly.
This is what we're going to do. Okay, it didn't work out today.
Yep.
Go back to the template.
Yep. And then I'm going to narrow that down even more, because I am a big proponent of, especially now in midlife, is getting rid of that perfectionistic mindset. We all have been spoon-fed it for decades and decades. So to help move away from that, there's this great strategy called the ABC game plan. So in helping us establish those bright lines, we have an A plan, our ideal. I'd love to work out 4 days this week. On an ideal level, that's going to be what I aspire for. B, well, on a realistic, what I'm aiming for is 3. And then C, we build in success at a bare minimum. I am going to do 2 days. So we build in success and also are compassionate with ourselves. So no matter what, I'm going to hit the C. I'm going to get in the 2 days. And then what often winds up happening is, I do this a lot when I'm not in the mood to work out. So I'm like, I'm going to do 1 round of lifting, then I'll hit every body part. And then I get into it. And I'm like, all right, I'll do another round. And before you know it, I did all 3 rounds.
You've done them full. I was just going to say, starting at C, that bare minimum.
Right.
And then, say if you start your week off on Mondays, the clock starts, and you do your workout on Monday, and you do your workout on Wednesday. And then I think there's something there subconsciously that you're going to go, I already did my 2. Let's go for 3.
It goes back to
almost like proving yourself right.
Right. It goes back to what we talked about. Motivation is something that happens from the doing. We get inspired from the doing. It creates a ripple effect. We talked about that a while ago. So no matter what, it builds in success. We at least get this level C. We're not feeling bad about ourselves. We cultivate self-love and compassion. We move away from the perfectionist mindset, but sometimes we can get to that A. I use that with working out often, but I used to do this because I used to play tennis back in the day. I only play pickleball now because I had my hip replaced. And I wasn't a very good tennis player, to be completely honest with you.
I don't play either, so.
No, I'm not really very competitive. So it was rough. So I would go to these games, and my A would be, I'm going to win the match, right? So the B would be so you win a game, but then there's matches. So you win the game, and then B would be, I'll win a couple of matches. But C would be, I am going to give my opponent a run for their money. And here's the thing, Lucie, if I give my opponent a run for their money, then the likelihood is that I'm going to win some matches. And you know what? If I win some matches, I might win that goddamn fucking game. Now, it didn't always happen, but it was a great place to just lessen the overwhelm, to get myself going and to start aspiring for more for myself. So it's a cool tool. It's a really cool tool.
I like that one. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts on celebrating our wins?
Huge. Okay, big, so important. I actually ask my clients once they start working with me is to create a celebration journal, a journal where they every week that they log in things that they feel that they could celebrate, big or small. It's so important on so many different levels because we have the tendency to pay more attention to the things that we didn't accomplish versus what we did.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So it's so and in order for to really reap the benefits, we have to almost spend more time on like relishing the good, the celebrations, so that we could squash the negativity. We almost have to take extra measures to do that, to squash that negativity bias. So we really need to like celebrate, whether that's, like I said, writing it in a journal. I like my clients will be like in the beginning, they're really pissed off with me because like they're like, I don't have anything to celebrate. I don't know. This wasn't a good week. I'm like, bullshit. Find something to celebrate. I don't care. Find it. And it's often that way of shifting it where I think we've talked about this even also in the past, the RAS, the reticular activating system. It helps us start moving our minds towards seeking the good, the lovely, which we have to retrain our brain. So these are all just like little cumulative things that really help us knock it out of the park, but it is a recipe. It's a recipe on many different levels.
And you do, and that's why we're doing this now, is because you do have to put in the forethought. You can't just wait until December 31st and say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's going to be my healthiest year ever.
Right.
Because you don't have all of these other things set up for yourself.
No.
No
one ever taught us this stuff.
No.
And we've always just blamed ourselves for when the struggle comes in. And rather than just lean into the fact the struggle will be there, we have to be realistic. But at the same time, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and give up. But that's a tough gig, because we grew up with this black and white mentality of all or nothing, all or nothing. And then we either are all in or we're all out. And then we give up on ourselves. And then it just feeds into feeling inadequate, less than, et cetera, which it's such bullshit. Like we have just been doing it wrong. It's honestly, there's so much science behind getting shit done. It's getting your aspirations in check. It is a science. It is a science.
So how do we break our aspirations down into those manageable steps? Where do we begin that process?
I would say then from there, that's where like the aim smart strategy comes in. That's probably something a lot of people are familiar with, because this takes all of that into consideration, where you actually really take specific steps to micro the macro of everything, and then build on your successes as you're moving along. So like you've ever heard of aim smart? I'm sure, right?
Well, I've heard of SMART goals, and I've also heard of something that it's instead of aiming for the bullseye, you're just aiming, and wherever you land, then you just sort of keep readjusting.
Right. It's similar. The difference is that it's like the SMART breaks it down. So I have it for here. Like aim is accept. Like what is the minimum action towards this goal, right? So like the ABC game plan, what's the C level at least? So if someone's like me wants to start out and they want to have more movement, and we talked about the possible obstacles that might get in their way, it might be, okay, so this week I'm going to get myself a pair of sneakers and an exercise video, or sign up for Peloton. Like what, I got to get the resources first, right? So what at the bare minimum am I going to do towards this goal? What am I aiming to do? And then hopefully if we have, more motivation, more inspiration to do more, maybe we get those sneakers on and we go for a walk, and that might be B, So A for aim is what at the very least, like what's acceptable, the action towards this goal. And then we do the ideal. What's the ideal? Kind of again, like what I said with, aim smart. And then what's the middle? So aim is very similar to ABC game plan. It's acceptable, what is your ideal, and what is the middle ground that we're aspiring for, that kind of thing. That's the aim. Then the smart is broken down into, as you know, specific. What is actually the first step that I'm actually going to do towards this goal? Buy the sneakers, look into health clubs, hire a life coach, consult a nutritionist, see that financial advisor, sign up for, I don't know if this is even, like a single site if you're dating again, maybe a support group, or get a partner so you can have an accountability. Like what are the steps I'm going to do that I'm going to start putting these things into place, right? Then we're going to break it down to measurable. So you got to make it measurable, super measurable. So what does that mean? That's like anytime we like measure a specific action, we put something concrete towards it. So at the very least, I will have reached out to 2 or 3 fitness clubs. I will have I will have bright lines. I will have pitched to 3 podcasts. Like you have to it's got to be measurable. You got to make it concrete. How can you measure it that, that you're actually doing this? For some people, maybe they need to put more R&R, more rest time into their life. How I will at least every day take 30 minutes to step back and just chill out. Maybe I'm going to meditate. Maybe I'm just going to step outside and get some fresh air. Maybe I'm going to read a book, whatever it might be, right? So what is measurable about it? We have to make it measurable. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then A is just also, do you have the right resources for all of this? You got to make it like aim for the tangible results. Like what is it that items that you want, such as I'll be doing this in order to achieve that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Then R is this reasonable? Is this even reasonable?
You mean, is the goal reasonable?
Yeah, like, is it reasonable that you have to reflect on that this week, when I happen to be traveling for work, or I'm preparing for the holidays, or I have that holiday dinner, is it reasonable to really expect myself to eat well 7 days out of 7 when I know I'm going to be at a holiday party? Like, is it
or are you setting yourself up to fail?
Right, exactly. So I am going, so like next week and actually into this week, I'm super busy because I'm preparing for Thanksgiving. And it's a lot of prep work. I have a lot of people. So, ideally, honestly, is it really reasonable to say I'm going to get in my daily workouts? No. But it might be that like at least I'll stretch and I'll get in, some kind of exercise or movement in. I have to be realistic. What is it, that's going on that week? That might be happening. Like last week, I might reflect on the fact that Rudy was getting neutered. Is it reasonable to think that the next day I'll be able to get on the Peloton? Because this kid, what happens with the dog that gets neutered? They with his cone and they bump into everything. I can't assist this poor dog.
It's an extra layer of, it doesn't sound like much, but sometimes these extra layers can just be exhausting.
Yeah, because for me to get on the Peloton and have 2 dogs who are like playing with him, who's got a cone, it's not good. It's not a good scene. It's a bad scene. So I don't think I'll be getting on the Peloton the very next day. Could I maybe do some strength training? Yes, because I could stop and start. The Peloton, you got to get in and out of the bike, it's a big deal. So you have to think about that. This is kind of where we're looking at our kryptonite, the obstacles. Is it realistic even? And then T, time-oriented. But by when exactly will you complete these tasks at hand so that you can then say, okay, is it, at the end of this week, like I'll say to my clients when we'll do an aim smart, I'll say, okay, so then that means next time we speak, these things will be in order. And they'll say sometimes yes, and sometimes saying, nope, I think I need 2 weeks, because I have X, Y, and Z going on. So we have to make sure it's time oriented. So that's really how AIM SMART breaks down. It just really micros the macro, the bigger objective of everything. And the small steps is what helps us, one, prevent overwhelm, because sometimes it's like, I don't even know where to begin. So I just avoid it and I procrastinate altogether. Or two, you got to go the distance. We don't want to do this just week 1, week 2, week 3, or week 4 in January. We want to still be doing this all through the year. So if we go out like gangbusters and dive into the deep end, we're going to burn ourselves out. It's not realistic to sustain.
No, and I think Aim Smart it's a kinder, more realistic approach to things. And it's moving away from, as you mentioned earlier, perfectionism.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how it's always been taught to us.
Yeah.
Is that when you have a goal, you say, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week. This is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. And then, you're very punishing towards yourself when you're not doing it, the 3rd week because you got a little bit sore because you overdid it. And, I think Aim Smart is definitely a more realistic approach.
Yeah.
And
It
you
helps,
can
like I
sit
said,
down at the
prevent the
beginning of the
overwhelm.
week.
Yeah.
You can sit down at the beginning of the week and plan your week, whatever your goals are, and aim smart on each of your goals
Right.
so that you have that plan in place.
Right. And sometimes I'll get some women, I get some pushback. I'm not going to lie. And they'll be like, I don't, I don't want to be so structured, and I don't want to have to, it kind of, it gets in my way. I kind of just like to go with the flow. I'm like, okay, what'd you hire me for then? You can't be wishy-washy. You have to be committed to the process with reasonable understanding that, we are human and there's only so much we can do. So we commit to the process. We take all these strategies into place. We need to support ourselves so that we can go the distance. Otherwise, we're going to peter out and just find ourselves at the end of the year wondering why we didn't get the results we wanted, or at limited results that we had that we received.
And how do we build in like evaluation points?
That's really, 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 really good stuff that you're bringing up. This is where you can have the AIM SMART written out, and then you could reflect to see if you're hitting your measurements. But that's so important. We need to trust the process. We need to go all in. We did our legwork. We did the research. We know we're going to do X. We're going to do Y. We have to see how it's working for ourselves. But then we need to step back and say, what's my level of energy around this right now? And I work with women on like that, where are they resonating at? Are they feeling, the momentum? Are there areas that are zapping their energy and pulling them back? Is this too hard? Do we need to edit and modify because maybe some we didn't discover, we are now discovering new obstacles that are coming into place that might be getting into the way of what you want, because life has a way of kind of keeping us on our toes where new things arise. So yes, at least, we can do it weekly through the AIM SMART, because you're establishing a weekly plan with the AIM SMART. So you always have that level of check-in, but I would say at least monthly, you need to step back and assess, where are you at? And this honestly is why I have a job, Lucie, because, we all need help. We all need to have accountability. We all need a cheerleader. And this is why I work, why I have a job, because it's hard to do this on our own.
It is.
It really, really is. So that's, and I get that people can't necessarily always hire a coach, but then, to expect yourself to, get out of your own way and, to sit down every month is a lot to ask yourself. Then get an accountability buddy, someone that that will keep you accountable to what you're saying, or at least check in with how are you doing with that goal. How are you making out with that? Because, you said it out loud, and once you say it out loud and someone's going to keep up on you, that, holds you true. And then it's not about beating yourself up if you don't meet that measure. It's more about then just stepping back and saying, so what went wrong? And if we don't do it monthly, it's going to be 4 months down the line. We lost 4 months and we're saying to ourselves, what went wrong then? When we could say, oh, what's going on here? Something's not quite working. This plan isn't working for me.
And that would be, diving into that, reflection on our Aim Smart. That would be a really good place to bring in journaling.
Yes.
Is to ask yourself those questions and to get real with yourself, because I've been journaling for over 5 years now. It's a daily practice. It's funny enough, the oddest habit that I've been able to instill. It's like, it's not even that it's a non-negotiable. It's just a part of who I am now. Yeah. It's really the only habit that I've ingrained in myself that way. But I think really, when you start exploring yourself, and it's one thing to talk to yourself in your head, but when you start writing your thoughts down, things come out. As you release them from your mind, new things can come up. And that's when you can really have some surprising moments. And
There's
I know
so many benefits to journaling. I mean, as you're saying, putting pen to paper is very powerful, and you don't even realize that you're having these thoughts and you're fleshing these thoughts out. There is the piece of then accountability. You're saying that you want X, Y, and Z, and are you reflecting back on it? It's journaling. I mean, all of these tools are what create a recipe for success. Not having the motivation or the gumption or the drive. It's none of that. We're not born that way. And some people may have more gumption than others for whatever reasons that might be. It could not necessarily for good reasons. It could be that like something fierce is chasing them, and so they have a lot of gumption, right? It's not necessarily a good thing. But, for ourselves, it's about putting habits and behaviors into place that support the outcomes we want. Your journaling does that for you, as it does for so many people. The things that we're talking about, aim smart, establishing bright lines, ABC game plans, going back to our episodes earlier between understanding your why and the values assessment, this is what creates a cumulative, powerful effect to help you become a better version of yourself. It's not one thing. It's many. It's a recipe. It's a recipe.
Well, Holly, I was going to ask you for your final words of wisdom as we wrap up this series, but I think you summed it up quite nicely there.
I hope so.
So just as a reminder, if you haven't watched our previous videos, check out the show notes, because we're going to have all of the links to our previous videos in there. And remember to visit my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on Start Here. And this is where you can get your free audio course, 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife. And make sure you check out the show notes for all of our links, including how to receive Holly's 10-question toolkit to ignite a midlife reboot.
Yes.
And until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and start rocking midlife like the badass